you want to start learning how to make your own beer. I like to use these, well, if I'm doing, for people that are just starting out, I like to use these Brewer Best kits. They're pretty simple. They don't require a bunch of extra equipment. Comes with everything you need for a 5-gallon batch of beer. You got this very detailed instructions, which we will go over. Hops. This is the smoked porter. I've made their porter before, and I've made their Irish stout. Comes with priming sugar, hops that I showed you before, different kind of hops, bottle caps, and then you get into your malts. We got this, try to focus this malt here. You got some more malt. This is how it gets its name, is this stuff's cherry smoked malt. Should be really good. Got our ale yeast. So that's good. And then you got, most all these come with 2 cans of liquid malt extract, which this saves you a ton of time on the, it does not allow you to make as complex a beer, rather than piecing all this stuff together and doing it that way. But this saves it so that you don't need a great big huge giant pot of boiling water to do 10 pounds of grain. You just get, 6.6 pounds of this stuff, and that takes the place of your base grains. And one of these little brew bags for the grains that we do have. And that's it in the box. So let's move on, get a few things together, and we'll start making this guy. Okay, we have a large aluminum pot on the stove here. We got 3 gallons of water in it. The directions say 2.5, but I find it much more controllable if I'm going with 3, and I'm able to adjust my heat, and it's as long as you don't go way over, it's a little easier to control. So the next thing we need to do is bring the temperature of the water up to about 170, what was it? You just follow the directions. 150 to 165 degrees. We got a little ways to go. So we're going to prep the grain bag now. So that is just all these malts go into this bag. You tie a knot in it, and I'll show you how that looks when we get them all mixed in there. And just so you guys know, we got 1 pound of cherry smoked crushed barley. It's a really light colored malt. I have no idea what they used for that. We got 8 ounces of crushed chocolate and 8 ounces of crushed Cara Brown. And we've got 4 ounces of crushed biscuit malt, 2 ounces of crushed coffee malt. And that's the grain, that's the actual whole grains that we're using. I just threw it back in the box. We got our bag of grains here. We're going to check our temp. And we're sitting at, man, this thing does not want to focus on that at all. That's no fun. But we're almost to 150. We're a few degrees away. We're gonna just start to, and I just take my time. I put it in, I pull it out. You want to make sure that it gets all the grains good. You want to Make sure that thing gets good and soaked the whole way through. And then I just wrap it off on my thermometer and tuck it in the pot so it don't burn. We'd start backing that heat off just a hair. Just a hair. We just want to keep it between 150 and 160 for 20 minutes. So I'm going to set a timer. And we'll see you guys back in about 20 minutes. Oh, and as this thing steeps, you want to agitate it with a spoon or something. You don't want it to just sit there. But yeah, we're going to steep these grains, and we'll see you in a bit. Another little trick that you can do is you take your liquid malt extract, especially if it's cold, stick it in some hot water. Well, rip the labels off and throw it in some hot water. It'll pour easier when we get to that stage. Oh, and you don't want to like really agitate it. You just want to move it around. You want to make sure that those grains are getting full contact with all that water so that you're pulling all that stuff out. And you don't want your temperature to go much higher than, you don't want it to get to 170 because then you're going to pull stuff out of the grains you don't want. Okay, so we're a little over halfway done with the steeping. As you can see, we have a nice chocolatey brown color, which is typical of ports and stouts. This is or porters and stouts, sorry. This is a porter, so that looks correct. We're keeping right at like 157-ish, somewhere in there. Just perfect. We're just staying right in between those two temperatures, 150 and 160. You gotta be, if you want it to taste right, this stuff's kind of a science. You have to be precise to a degree. All right, everybody, it's been 20 minutes. We're gonna pull the grains out, and you just let all that good stuff, you don't mess with it, you don't poke it, you don't squeeze it, you don't do anything to it. You just let it run out naturally. And all that good stuff's gonna end up in there. That's exactly what we want. In the meantime, you'd want to have your get a can of that liquid malt extract ready to dump in. You don't want to dump that stuff in all at once. We'll add a little bit. We've lost quite a bit of heat. We're going to bring this up to a slow rolling boil. And then it's going to be time to add the hops. And that's when things get real interesting. So I'm going to let this drain and we'll be right back. Okay, so we've just added our liquid malt extract. I didn't film adding it because it's just me pouring this tarry, syrupy looking stuff in there. I turn the heat off once it hits about 200 degrees. And then I make sure I dump it in, and I make sure that that stuff is fully dissolved. There's nothing sticking to the bottom of the pot that's caramelizing or causing any problems. Oop. And then I kick the heat back on, and we're going to be adding hops real soon. I always think it's important while you're doing this stuff is, especially when you're just learning about making beer, is sample your base ingredients, smell stuff. Take a little piece of grain and stick it in your mouth and taste it. Don't be afraid to try this stuff on its own. It will help you learn. All right, everybody. It's that time. We got a slow rolling boil. We're going to take our 1 ounce of Columbus hops, hop pellets, and we're just going to sprinkle a few of them guys in. Dump the rest in. And got a timer for 55 minutes. And then we'll add the fuggle. So within, well, we're at 4 minutes. Within a few minutes of adding your first batch of hops into the beer, the whole room should just fill up with the smell of hops and malt, and it just smells great, especially with these darker beers. Well, we got 4 minutes until we add one of my favorite hops, Fuggle hops. There's a really good chance if you've had a porter, you've probably had this hop before. And while we're brewing this, we're having a maple porter from Riverside Brewing Company. Alright, timer went off. It's time to add the Fuggle pellets. And it'll get all frothed up, probably a little bit. Oh yeah. And we're going to set a timer for 5 minutes. And then we're done with the boil. Alright, and that's the end of that boil. So we're going to cool this off in the sink. I'm filling it up with cold water. We've killed the heat. It's just sitting there now. We'll add that to our fermenter and then top it off with water. Once it's cooled down, we'll pitch yeast, and then it's a waiting game. Alright everybody, it's been a few hours and this guy has cooled down. So we're just going to take our yeast. And you'll just want to stir that up and let it sit, and we'll be back in a few weeks.